At 4 o'clock in the morning, my daughter sent me a text message that destroyed everything. Mom, I know you paid $220,000 for the wedding, but my fiancé does not want to see you at the ceremony. I read those words in the darkness of my bedroom and felt the air leave my lungs. $220,000. 9 months of my life organizing every single detail. And now, less than 12 hours before the ceremony was set to begin, they were kicking me out like I was trash. My hands trembled over the phone. I could have screamed, I could have cried, I could have begged, but I wrote just 2 words, all right. And in that precise instant, at 7 minutes past 4, on that cold morning, I made a decision that would change everything. That night, I decided I had had enough, and then I made my final move. No one in this world was prepared for what happened next. But you need to know me first. You need to understand who I really am, because that makes everything else make sense. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old, and I am not the weak, helpless little old lady my son-in-law Julian imagined I was. I am the woman who built a pharmaceutical empire from absolute nothing, with intelligence, vision, and a will that never bowed to anything or anyone. When I was 24, I worked as an assistant in a small drugstore downtown. I earned peanuts, but I had something no one else had, I observed. I saw how suppliers ripped off my boss, how prices went up for no reason, how people needed medication and could not afford it. I studied pharmaceutical chemistry at night school for 6 years while working during the day. Without anyone's help, my husband left me when Emily was 3 years old because, in his words, I was obsessed with studying instead of taking care of my home. He left me without a dime, with a toddler and an uncertain future. It was the best gift that miserable man could have given me. His departure set me free. I worked double shifts, triple shifts. I studied on city buses, in waiting rooms, in any free moment. Emily slept in the back room of the pharmacy while I did inventory until the early hours of the morning. We ate peanut butter sandwiches and instant noodles almost every day. We wore clothes from Goodwill. But never did we give up. When I finally graduated, I applied for a loan that no one wanted to give me. I knocked on 42 bank doors, 42 rejections. At door 43, an old branch manager looked me in the eyes and said, "You have fire in your gaze. I am going to give you a shot." With that loan, I opened my first pharmacy. Just one, small, in a forgotten neighborhood, but I had something the big chains like CVS or Walgreens did not have. I knew my people. I knew what they needed, when they needed it, how I could help them. I offered payment plans, free consultations, home delivery for the elderly. In 3 years, I opened the second one. In 7, I had 10. Today, 35 years later, my chain has 120 pharmacies across 5 states, its own laboratories, and a value exceeding $80 million. I built all of that alone, every decision, every risk, every sacrifice. And I did it for one single reason: Emily, my daughter, my only daughter, so that she would never have to suffer like I suffered, so that she would never have to beg for opportunities, so that she could study whatever she wanted, travel wherever she dreamed, be whoever she chose to be. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I protected her so much that she never learned to recognize predators when they approached with charming smiles. Julian appeared 2 years ago at a charity gala. Tall, handsome, dressed in a gray suit that probably cost more than a normal person's monthly salary. He introduced himself as a financial consultant specializing in high-yield investments. Emily was mesmerized. I saw something different in him from the beginning. I saw how he calculated every word, how he measured every gesture, how his eyes lit up when someone mentioned money or real estate. But my daughter was in love, and I kept quiet, because after so many years of seeing her focused only on her career as an architect, I finally saw her shine for someone. When Julian asked me for Emily's hand, he looked at me with those honey-colored eyes and told me, "Eleanor, I promise to take care of your daughter like the greatest treasure of my life." I held his gaze and warned him, "Julian, my daughter is everything to me. If you ever hurt her, you will discover that there is not enough distance on this planet to escape me." He smiled as if I were just an overprotective mother making a tender scene. Now I know I should have trusted that instinct. The wedding. That damn wedding. Emily wanted a fairy tale, something that would be etched in everyone's memory forever. And I, like the sentimental fool I was, decided to give her exactly that. $220,000. The most exclusive venue in the entire city, with those infinite gardens full of marble fountains and stone paths. A dress flown in specially from Milan, champagne-colored with hand-embroidered Swarovski crystals, which cost $32,000. 300 people on the guest list. A live symphony orchestra for the ceremony. An international band for the reception. An 8-course gourmet dinner, designed by a chef who has cooked for presidents. The flowers. My God, the flowers. Imported roses, exotic orchids, arrangements that looked like living works of art. I hired the best floral designer in the country, the same one who decorated a famous actress's wedding last year. Each centerpiece cost $1,200. $1,200 per table. And there were 40 tables. For 9 months, that wedding consumed my life. Weekly meetings with event coordinators, menu tastings, wine selection, lighting tests, designing invitations on cotton paper with gold ink. Emily was so busy with a major architectural project that basically I coordinated everything, and Julian was always there, opining, suggesting, pushing toward more expensive options. "Eleanor," he would tell me with that smooth voice, "Emily deserves the best, and you have the power to give it to her. We only get married once in a lifetime." I nodded. I signed checks. I approved increasingly inflated budgets, because I wanted to see my daughter happy. Because after all the sacrifices, all the years of struggle, I could finally give her something I never had, a princess wedding. And now, at 4 a.m. on the day of that wedding, my daughter was telling me I was not welcome. "My fiancé does not want to see you at the ceremony. Your presence makes him uncomfortable." Those words burned my throat. I, who had paid for every last pin, who had chosen every detail, who had bent over backward to make that day perfect, was now a hindrance, a nuisance, something to be hidden. I sat on my bed, watching the shadows the streetlights cast on my ceiling. And then, like a lightning bolt, I remembered something crucial I had discovered 3 months ago and which, in the chaos of organizing the wedding, had been filed away in the back of my mind. 3 months ago, while clearing out the basement of my old family home before selling it, I found a small safe hidden behind some pipes. It was rusted, forgotten, covered in decades of dust. It took me 2 hours to open it with the help of a locksmith. Inside were documents belonging to my father, old photos, and a manila envelope sealed with red wax that looked like it was from another era. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a will, my father's will, dated exactly 1 week before he died, and what I read there left me breathless. My father had left a secret will that no one knew about. Not even my mother mentioned it before she died. In that document, drafted in the shaky handwriting of a sick but lucid man, my father bequeathed me 60% of the shares of a pharmaceutical company called Valley Laboratories, a company he and his partner, a man named Arthur Sterling, had founded 40 years ago. When my father died, I was 23 and devastated by grief. Arthur came to the funeral, hugged me, told me everything would be fine, and then vanished. He never looked for me again. He never mentioned the company. He never spoke of shares or inheritances. I assumed my father had died bankrupt, that nothing was left except debts. But that will said otherwise. It said I was the owner of 60% of a company that, according to what I investigated that same night on my computer, was now worth approximately $120 million. $120 million. My hands shook so much I almost spilled my coffee on the keyboard. That meant my share, my legitimate inheritance, was worth $72 million. $72 million that had been hidden from me for almost 50 years. I dug deeper. Valley Laboratories had become one of the largest producers of generic drugs in the country. Arthur Sterling was listed as CEO and, according to public records, the sole owner. He had completely erased my father's existence from the company's history. On the corporate website, in interviews, everywhere, Arthur presented himself as the solitary founder, the visionary who built everything from scratch. He had robbed me. For almost 50 years, that man stole my inheritance while I fought to survive, while I raised my daughter alone, while I worked myself to exhaustion to build something from nothing, and he lived like a king with the money that legally belonged to me. That early morning, after reading Emily's text, everything made sense in a horrible and perfect way. I got out of bed, turned on all the lights in my apartment, and took that safe out of the closet where I had kept it. I read the will again, this time looking for every detail, every clause, and then I saw something I had overlooked the first time. A handwritten note in the margin. In my father's cramped handwriting, Arthur has a copy of this document. I trust he will take care of my little girl. Arthur knew. From the beginning, he knew that inheritance belonged to me, and he chose to steal from me. He chose to leave me in poverty while he built an empire with my father's work and vision. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved for years. Robert Vance, the best corporate lawyer I know, a 60-year-old man, relentless, with a reputation for never losing. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice raspy with sleep. "Eleanor, it is 4:30 in the morning. Someone better be dead or—" "Robert," I interrupted him, "I need you to come to my house right now. I have a case that is going to make history, and I need it to start today." There was silence. Then I heard movement, sheets rustling, footsteps. "Give me 30 minutes, he said, and hung up. While I waited for Robert, I did something else. I opened my laptop and started investigating Julian. Really investigating. Not like the superficial search I had done when he started dating Emily, but a deep dive, the kind I do when evaluating business partners. I hired a private investigation service I use to run background checks on executives. I paid them triple to get me results in less than 6 hours. Robert arrived at 5:15. He entered my apartment with his leather briefcase, his gray hair messy, but his eyes completely awake and sharp. I poured him coffee and put the will on the table. "Read this," I told him. He did so in silence. I watched his eyes widen with every line. When he finished, he looked up at me. "Eleanor, this is it. This is huge. If this is legitimate, and it appears to be, you are entitled to a fortune. We can sue Arthur Sterling for fraud, concealment of assets, unjust enrichment. We can destroy him." "I do not want to destroy him yet," I said calmly. "First, I want information. I want to know exactly what he did, how he did it, and who else is involved. And I want this kept absolute secret until I decide to make a move." Robert nodded slowly. "He knows how I work. He knows my patience. How much time do I have?" he asked. 1 week. Maybe 2. But there is something else. I took a deep breath. Today is my daughter's wedding. I have just been kicked out of my own wedding, the wedding I paid for. And I have a suspicion that my son-in-law knows something about this inheritance. I need you to investigate the connection between Julian and Arthur Sterling. I need to know if there is anything linking them." Robert stared at me. "Do you think your son-in-law approached your daughter for the money?" "I do not think so, Robert. I know so. I feel it in my bones. But I need proof." We stayed working until 7 in the morning. Robert made calls, sent encrypted emails, activated his network of contacts. I made more coffee and organized all the documents I had. The will, my father's company papers, old bank records, everything. At 7:30, my phone rang. It was the private investigator. "Mrs. Eleanor, I have preliminary information on Julian Sanders, and believe me, you are going to want to hear this sitting down." I sat down. "Julian has gambling debts of $180,000 with 3 different casinos. He has been dodging debt collectors for 8 months. Furthermore, we found that he applied for 2 fraudulent loans using false financial information. One of those loans was applied for in the name of his fiancée, Emily, without her knowledge. He forged her signature on the documents." I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins. "What else?" I asked with a tense voice. "There is a woman. Her name is Chloe. They have been in a relationship for at least a year. I have photos of them together in hotels, restaurants, trips. She believes Julian is going to leave Emily after the wedding. I have messages between them. In one, dated 3 weeks ago, Julian writes to her, 'I just have to hold on a little longer, my love. After the wedding, I will have access to everything. The old woman is rich, and that fool Emily will sign whatever I put in front of her. In 6 months, we will be in the Bahamas, living like kings.'" I closed my eyes. I breathed. Part of me wanted to scream, break something, cry for my daughter, who was about to marry a monster. But the other part, the part that built an empire, the part that survived everything, that part turned cold as ice. "Send me everything," I said. "Every photo, every message, every document. And I want active surveillance today. I want to know every move Julian makes." "Understood." I hung up and looked at Robert. "I need a plan," I said. "A perfect plan. Because today I am not staying home crying. Today, I am going to that wedding. And I am going to make sure it is a day no one ever forgets." Robert smiled. It was a dangerous smile. "Then we better get to work." Robert and I worked like machines for the next few hours. By 9 in the morning, we already had the skeleton of a plan. By 10, that skeleton had muscle. By 11, it had sharp teeth. The wedding started at 6 in the evening. We had 7 hours to prepare the perfect strike. The first thing I did was call Arthur Sterling. I dialed the number for Valley Pharmaceuticals and asked to be transferred directly to him. The secretary tried to stop me, but I used my business voice, the one that does not accept no for an answer. "Tell him that Eleanor Vance needs to speak with him about the will of his founding partner, Robert Vance. Tell him I have legal documents that interest him. And tell him that if he does not return my call in 10 minutes, tomorrow first thing in the morning, he will be receiving a lawsuit for fraud and concealment of inheritance." 6 minutes later, my phone rang. "Eleanor." Arthur's voice sounded old, shaky, but also cautious. "It has been so many years. How are you, my dear?" "Do not call me my dear, Arthur. I found my father's will. The real will. The one you hid for almost 50 years. There was a long silence. I could hear his heavy breathing on the other end of the line. "Eleanor." "I can explain." "I do not want explanations," I interrupted him. "I want information. And I want it now. Do you know a man named Julian Sanders?" "Why do you ask about him?" His voice changed. Now he sounded nervous. "Answer the question, Arthur. Julian. Julian is my accountant's son." "Frank." "No, wait, Frank Sanders. He worked for me for years. Julian used to come to the company when he was a kid. I have known him since he was 12. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. And what else? What relationship does Julian have with you now?" 2 years ago he came to see me. He needed money. He had problems with gambling debts. I lent him $50,000. He told me he would pay them back in 6 months. He never did. Then he came back a year ago and told me he had found the solution to all his problems. That he was going to marry the daughter of a wealthy woman. That soon he would have access to a fortune. He told you my name. Not directly, but he mentioned something about a pharmaceutical inheritance. He said his future mother-in-law did not know she was the owner of millions. And then I put the pieces together. Eleanor, I realized he was talking about you, about your father's inheritance that I had hidden. And what did you do, Arthur? Did you tell that parasite about my inheritance?" I told him about the shares. I told him that if he married Emily, eventually he would have access to that fortune when you were no longer around. I suggested ways to speed up the process, documents that Emily could sign, power of attorney, trusts. "Eleanor, please, let me explain." I hung up the phone. I could not listen anymore without wanting to smash something against the wall. Robert was looking at me with a somber expression. "We got him," he said simply. "Conspiracy to commit fraud. That imbecile just confessed everything." "You recorded the call, right?" I asked. Robert held up his phone. "Every word." I took a deep breath. Now I had the connection. Julian had not fallen in love with Emily. He had hunted her like a predator hunts its prey. And Arthur, the man who stole my inheritance, had given him the treasure map. At 12 noon, the private investigator sent the complete package. Photos of Julian with Chloe in unequivocally romantic situations. Screenshots of messages where they discussed their plans. Documents of the fraudulent loans. Records of the gambling debts. Everything meticulously organized, verified, ready to be presented as evidence. Robert reviewed every document with an expert eye. "This is enough to put him in jail," he said. "Financial fraud, document forgery, conspiracy. We are talking about 3 to 7 years in prison minimum." I do not want him to go to jail yet, I said. First, I want him to suffer. I want him to lose everything in front of everyone. And then, when he is completely destroyed, then he will go to jail. Robert nodded. He knows me well enough to know that when I plan something, I do it right. At 1 p.m, I hired an audiovisual production team. I paid them $10,000 to work with absolute haste. I sent them all the photos and screenshots. I asked them to create a professional video presentation. Clear, impossible to ignore. Something that could be projected on big screens. At 2 p.m, I called the event venue. "This is Eleanor Vance speaking," I told the coordinator. "I am the bride's mother and the one who paid for this entire event. I need you to install 2 additional screens in the main hall. Big screens. And I need access to the projection system." "Mrs. Vance, that was not in the original plan. I will pay you $20,000 extra if you have it ready before 5 p.m, in cash. The screens will be ready at 4:30, ma'am." At 3 p.m, I received another text from Emily. "Mom, I am so sorry about this morning. Julian is very stressed with the wedding. Maybe you could come just to the reception, not to the ceremony. Please understand." I read the message 3 times. "My poor girl. So blind, so manipulated." I replied, "Do not worry, sweetheart. Everything is going to be fine. I love you more than anything in this world." It was true. I loved her so much that I was willing to destroy her wedding to save her from a monster. At 4 p.m, Robert arrived with 3 more people. A notary public, a fraud squad officer who owed him a favor, and an elegant woman in her 50s with a leather briefcase. "Eleanor," Robert said, "this is Sarah Jenkins, divorce lawyer, specialist in emergency annulments. If Emily decides to get out of this today, Sarah can start the process immediately." Sarah shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Vance, it is an honor." Robert told me the situation. "I want you to know that I am here to protect your daughter. If she signs the annulment papers today, before consummating the marriage, we can undo it as if it never existed." "And what about the power of attorney documents that Julian will probably make her sign on the honeymoon?" I asked. "Void. Everything will be void. That man will not touch a cent of your family's money." At 5 p.m, I took a bath. I put on an elegant wine-red dress I bought years ago for a gala. I fixed my hair. I applied my makeup carefully. I put on my pearl earrings, the ones I bought with my first big profit in business. I looked in the mirror and saw the woman who had survived everything. The woman who had built an empire. The woman who was about to save her daughter from the worst mistake of her life. Robert was waiting for me in the living room with the whole team. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready," I replied. "Let's give them a show they will never forget." We got into 3 cars. I was in my black Mercedes, Robert and his team in a BMW, the tech team in a van with all the audiovisual equipment. We headed to the event venue like a convoy of justice. On the way, I received a message from the private investigator. "Julian just arrived at the hall. He is nervous. He keeps checking his phone. Chloe sent him a message 10 minutes ago. You are practically a married man now, my love. When are we getting out of here?" he replied. "Soon, baby. Very soon." I smiled. Poor idiot. He had no idea what was coming for him. We arrived at the venue at 5:40. The gardens were spectacular. Flowers everywhere. Lights hanging from the trees. White chairs perfectly aligned. An altar decorated like something out of a dream. $220,000 looked exactly like $220,000. Guests were starting to arrive. Elegant dresses, expensive suits, important people, friends of Emily, Julian's family. Everyone smiling, all oblivious to the bomb that was about to explode. I walked in through the main door with my head held high. The event coordinator almost fainted when she saw me enter. She ran towards me with wide eyes, waving her hands as if she wanted to physically stop me. "Mrs. Vance, I thought you were not coming. Miss Emily told me that." "I changed my mind," I said with an icy smile. "After all, I paid for every detail of this wedding. It would be a shame to miss it, don't you think?" The woman swallowed hard and nodded nervously. She knew who signed the checks. "The screens I requested. Are they ready?" "Yes, ma'am. 2 additional screens in the reception hall. just as you asked. And we have full access to the projection system. Perfect. My tech team needs access in 15 minutes. Tell them to cooperate completely. I walked through the gardens as if I owned the place. Because, essentially, I did. Every flower, every light, every chair, everything was paid for with my money. The guests who recognized me greeted me with surprise. Some seemed confused to see me there. Julian had probably been spreading rumors that I was sick, or traveling, or whatever lie justified my absence. I saw Julian's parents near the altar, Frank and his wife, a thin woman with too much makeup and a fake smile. Frank worked for Arthur for years. Surely he knew everything about my stolen inheritance. Surely he had helped his son plan this elaborate scam. They saw me, and the woman's smile froze. Frank visibly paled. I held his gaze. I did not look away. I saw the fear settle on their faces. They knew something was wrong. They could feel it. Robert approached my side, discreet but present. "The tech team is loading the files into the projection system," he murmured. "We have total control. When you give the signal, the screens will show everything." And the fraud officer? Waiting outside with complete documentation. The moment Julian sees what we are going to show, he will probably try to flee. He will not make it to the door. At 6 o'clock sharp, the ceremony began. Violin music filled the air. The guests took their seats. I stood at the back, deliberately visible. I wanted Julian to see me. I wanted him to know I was here. And then I saw him. Julian appeared walking toward the altar with his best man. He was wearing an impeccable black tuxedo that I probably paid for too. His hair perfectly styled, his toothpaste commercial smile. He looked like the perfect groom, like the ideal son-in-law, like the man every mother would wish for her daughter. Liar, con artist, predator. When he reached the altar and turned to wait for the bride, his eyes scanned the audience, and he found me. He saw me standing at the back, in my wine-red dress, staring at him. His smile wavered, just for a second, but I saw it. I saw the panic cross his eyes. I saw him swallow hard. I saw him try to regain his composure. I smiled at him. A small, calm, absolutely terrifying smile. The music changed. The wedding march began. Everyone stood up. And then I saw her, my Emily, my beautiful daughter, walking down the aisle in a champagne-colored dress that sparkled with every step, her hair up in an elaborate style, her face radiant with happiness. She looked like a princess. She looked like everything I had dreamed for her. And she was about to marry a monster who only wanted to steal everything from her. For a moment, just a moment, I hesitated. Did I have the right to destroy this moment? Did I have the right to ruin what should be the happiest day of her life? But then I remembered the messages between Julian and Chloe. I remembered the fraudulent loans. I remembered his plan to make her sign powers of attorney on the honeymoon. I remembered that this man did not love her. He never loved her. He only loved the money he could get through her. Emily passed by me without seeing me. She was completely focused on Julian, with that look of pure love that only people who still believe in fairy tales have. She reached the altar and handed her bouquet of white roses to her maid of honor. Julian took her hands. The officiant began to speak. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Emily and Julian." I moved silently to one side of the garden where I had a better view. Robert followed me. I took out my phone and sent a message to the tech team. "Wait for my signal. When I say, 'Now, activate the screens.'" The ceremony continued. Traditional vows. Pretty words about eternal love and commitment. Julian recited them with a soft, emotional voice that he had probably practiced in front of the mirror. Emily was crying with happiness. Some female guests were crying too. It was the perfect scene of a perfect romance. Everything was a lie. The officiant reached the crucial part. "If anyone present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace." Silence fell over the garden. This was the moment. The traditional moment where no one ever says anything. The moment that exists only as a formality. I took a step forward. "I have a reason," I said with a clear, strong voice. 200 heads turned toward me. Emily saw me for the first time. Her face went from confusion to joy. "Mom? You came?" "I thought that." "Yes, my love. I came because I love you too much to let you make the biggest mistake of your life. Julian let go of Emily's hands. His face lost all color. Eleanor, this is inappropriate. This is not the time or place to. To what, Julian? To tell the truth? To show my daughter who you really are? The officiant looked completely lost. The guests murmured. Emily looked at me with a mixture of confusion and pain. Mom, what are you doing? Please, do not ruin this. I am not ruining anything, my love. I am saving you. I turned to Robert. Now. Robert sent the message. Immediately, the giant screens surrounding the garden lit up, and the presentation began. First image. Julian kissing a brunette woman on a hotel terrace. The date in the corner. 3 weeks ago. Emily gasped. The murmurs turned into exclamations. That is a lie. Those photos are photoshopped, shouted Julian. Second image. Julian and the same woman in a hotel bed, clearly in an intimate situation. Date. 2 months ago. Eleanor, stop this immediately. Julian's father stood up. Sit down, Frank, I said coldly. You knew exactly what kind of son you raised. Third image. Screenshot of a text message. The words projected so large that no one could ignore them. I just have to hold on a little longer, my love. After the wedding, I will have access to everything. The old woman is rich, and that fool Emily will sign whatever I put in front of her. In 6 months, we will be in the Bahamas, living like kings. The silence that followed was absolute. Emily stumbled. Her maid of honor had to hold her up. No, it cannot be true, whispered Emily. All of this is a farce, shouted Julian. Eleanor is inventing everything because she is jealous of our happiness. Fourth image. Loan documents. Emily's signature on applications she had never seen. Clear, evident, criminal forgeries. These loans, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear, were applied for in your name, Emily. Without your knowledge or consent, Julian forged your signature. He obtained $200,000 using your identity. That is a federal crime. Fifth image. Gambling debt records. Casino Royal, $120,000. Golden Palace, $35,000. Diamond Club, $25,000. Your future husband, I continued, owes $180,000 to casinos. He has creditors looking for him, and he planned to use your money, our family money, to pay his compulsive gambling debts. Julian tried to walk toward the screens, as if he could physically turn them off. Stop this. You have no right. Robert stepped in his path with 2 security officers he had hired specifically for this moment. I have every right, I said, because I paid for this wedding. Every penny. And because I have something else to show. Sixth image. An audio recording converted into a waveform visual on the screens. I pressed play on my phone. Arthur Sterling's voice filled the garden through the speakers. Julian came to see me a year ago and told me he had found the solution to all his problems, that he was going to marry the daughter of a wealthy woman, that soon he would have access to a fortune. I told him about Eleanor's shares. I told him that if he married Emily, eventually he would have access to that fortune. I suggested ways to speed up the process, documents that Emily could sign, power of attorney, trusts. The garden erupted in chaos, screams, gasps, people standing up. Julian's mother covered her mouth with her hands. His father tried to run out, but security officers stopped him. Emily fell to her knees. Her $32,000 dress crumpled against the grass. She was crying in a way that broke my heart. I ran toward her, but Julian got there first. Emily, my love, listen to me. None of this is true. Your mother is lying because she never approved of our marriage. She is making it up. Do not touch her, I screamed. Do not you dare touch my daughter with your dirty hands. Robert appeared at my side with more documents. Mr. Sanders, he said with an official voice, I have here arrest warrants for financial fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I also have a temporary restraining order prohibiting you from approaching Emily Vance or any member of her family. Julian backed away. His face went from panic to pure rage. You cannot do this to me. I love Emily. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. A female voice cut through the air. We all turned. A brunette woman in a tight red dress walked between the rows of chairs. I recognized her immediately from the photos. Chloe. A misunderstanding, Julian, she repeated. Like when you promised me we would be together after today? Like when you told me this wedding was just a formality to get the money? Emily looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. Who are you? I am Chloe, this man's real girlfriend. We have been together for 2 years. He promised me he would marry you only to access your family's money, and that afterwards he would divorce you and we would go away together. Chloe looked at Julian with contempt. But I realized something today. If he is lying to you, he is also lying to me. This man loves no one but money. Julian tried to speak, but the words would not come out. He looked like what he was, a con man caught in his own lies. Julian's parents tried to sneak through the crowd. Robert made a signal, and the officers stopped them too. Frank Sanders, said Robert loudly. As accountant for Valley Laboratories for 15 years, you knew about Eleanor Vance's hidden inheritance. You helped Arthur Sterling hide those assets, and you trained your son to execute this fraud. There are charges waiting for you too. Julian's mother began to sob dramatically. We did not know anything. My husband is innocent. My son is innocent. Your son, I said with an icy voice, planned to steal everything from my daughter. He planned to make her sign legal documents that would give him total control over her finances. And you knew it. The messages we intercepted show that you advised him on how to manipulate Emily emotionally. I approached Emily, who was still kneeling on the grass, trembling. I knelt beside her, not caring that my dress got dirty. My love, I whispered. I know it hurts. I know your heart is broken. But I swear I did this to save you. That man never loved you. He only saw you as a means to get money. Emily hugged me and cried against my shoulder. She cried like I had not seen her cry since she was a little girl. I stroked her hair and let her let out all the pain. Around us, the guests were in total shock. Some people were taking photos with their phones. Others simply stared open-mouthed. Emily's close friends approached, forming a protective circle around us. Sarah Jenkins, the divorce lawyer, appeared with her briefcase. Emily, she said with a gentle but firm voice, the ceremony was not completed. There is no legal marriage. But if Julian got you to sign any document before today, I need you to tell me now. Emily raised her head, eyes red and swollen. A week ago he made me sign something. He said it was for the honeymoon, so he could make reservations in my name. I did not read the whole thing. I just signed where he told me. Sarah and Robert exchanged worried looks. Do you remember what kind of document it was? Asked Sarah. There were many pages. Fine print. Julian told me not to worry, that it was just travel routine. Power of attorney, murmured Robert. Probably gave him access to bank accounts, properties, financial decisions. We can annul it, said Sarah quickly. With the evidence of fraud we have, any document signed under false pretenses is legally void. Julian will not touch a penny. In that moment, Julian tried to run. He turned and sprinted toward the garden exit. He did not get far. The financial fraud officer Robert had brought intercepted him. In seconds, Julian was handcuffed. Let me go. This is illegal. You cannot arrest me at my own wedding. It is not your wedding, I said, standing up. It is the wedding I paid for. And technically, there is no wedding. There is no marriage. There is nothing except a criminal being arrested for his crimes. I walked toward Julian. I planted myself in front of him. This 71-year-old woman looking at this 38-year-old predator who thought he could destroy my family. You thought I was a stupid old woman with money, I said in a low voice, but loud enough for everyone to hear. You thought you could manipulate my daughter, steal our fortune, and disappear into the sunset with your mistress. But you made a fundamental mistake, Julian. You underestimated the woman who built an empire from scratch, the woman who survived worse things than you, the woman who will protect her daughter at any cost. I stepped closer, until our faces were inches apart. You are going to prison. 3 to 7 years for financial fraud. Your parents will also face charges. Arthur Sterling is going to lose everything for hiding my inheritance. And I am going to personally ensure that every day you spend locked up, you remember that it was your own greed that destroyed you. Julian spit at me, literally spit in my face. The officers slammed him against the ground immediately. Screams filled the garden. Emily screamed. but I simply wiped my face with a handkerchief Robert offered me. That, I said calmly, is assault on a witness. Add another 6 months to his sentence. The officers dragged Julian away while he shouted obscenities. His parents were escorted behind him, the mother still sobbing, the father in absolute silence. Chloe watched them with crossed arms, an expression of satisfaction on her face. I approached her. "Thank you for coming," I told her. She looked at me surprised. "You knew I would come." "I had hoped. The investigator I hired has been following you. He knew you were near the venue. He knew you could not resist coming to see if Julian really got married." Chloe smiled bitterly. "I came to ruin the wedding, but I see you already had it all planned." "You were the icing on the cake," I admitted. "Your testimony can be useful in the trial. If you cooperate with the authorities, you will probably avoid charges as an accomplice." She nodded slowly. "I will cooperate. That bastard used me just as much as he used your daughter." The garden had turned into a scene of controlled chaos. Half the guests had left, scandalized or simply uncomfortable with the drama. The other half stayed, some out of genuine concern for Emily, others because they had never witnessed anything like this and did not want to miss a second. Waiters were still standing by the tables in the reception hall, not knowing what to do with the 8-course dinner no one was going to eat. Emily was still sitting on the grass, surrounded by her closest friends. One of them, Megan, looked at me with a mix of respect and fear. "Mrs. Vance," she said quietly, "we all thought you were being overprotective with Emily. We all believed Julian was perfect. I am so sorry. We should have seen the signs." "Do not apologize," I replied. "Predators like Julian are experts at hiding who they really are. They fool everyone. That is why they are so dangerous." I knelt beside Emily again. Her face was destroyed, but there was something different in her eyes now. It was no longer just pain. It was also understanding. She was starting to process the truth. "Mom," she whispered, "when did you know? When did you know Julian was this?" "I had suspicions from the beginning," I admitted. "Something about him never seemed genuine to me. But suspicions are not proof. So I investigated. And when I found your grandfather's will 3 months ago, everything started to fit together. I discovered there was a huge inheritance hidden from me. And I discovered Julian knew about it, that his whole plan was to marry you to access that money." Emily closed her eyes. "I felt so loved," she whispered. "Every word he said to me, every romantic gesture, every promise, it was all a lie. Not everything in your life is a lie, my love. My love for you is real. Your friend's love is real. And now you are free from a man who would have destroyed you." Robert approached discreetly. "Eleanor, Arthur Sterling just arrived. He is outside, asking to speak with you. He says he wants to settle all this in private." I smiled humorlessly. Of course he wants to settle it in private. After 50 years of stealing from me, now he wants to negotiate. Tell him to come in, but let it be here, in front of everyone. No more secrets. No more hidden lies. Minutes later, Arthur Sterling entered the garden. He was a man of almost 80, with completely white hair and an elegant wooden cane. He looked rich, successful, respectable, all built on the money he stole from me. The remaining guests recognized him. Arthur Sterling was famous in the pharmaceutical world. A tycoon, a philanthropist, a man who supposedly built his empire with hard work and vision. Lies. All lies, Eleanor said with a trembling voice. "Please, let's talk in private. We do not need to do this in front of witnesses, complete. Of course we need witnesses, Arthur. Because you have operated in the shadows for 50 years. It is time for the truth to come to light." I took a copy of my father's will out of my bag. I held it up so everyone could see it. "This document," I said loud and clear, "is the will of my father, Robert Vance, co-founder of Valley Laboratories. In it, my father leaves me 60% of the company's shares. 60%. That makes me the majority shareholder. That means the company is legally mine." Murmurs of shock ran through the garden. Some of the guests worked in the pharmaceutical industry. They knew exactly what that meant. "Valley Laboratories," I continued, "is worth approximately $120 million. My 60% equals $72 million. $72 million that this man hid from me for almost 50 years while I fought to survive, while I raised my daughter alone, while I built my own business from scratch. Arthur staggered. He leaned heavily on his cane. Eleanor, I can explain. Your father and I had a verbal agreement. He wanted me to run the company. I thought that. You thought what? That you could ignore a legal will because it suited you? That you could steal from your partner's daughter and call it a verbal agreement? I built that company. I made it grow. Your father was sick. He could not work. My father entrusted you with his legacy. He entrusted you to take care of his daughter. And you betrayed me in the worst possible way. Robert took a step forward with more documents. Mr. Sterling, we have evidence that you deliberately hid this will. We have the recording of your phone confession admitting you knew about Mrs. Vance's inheritance. And we have evidence that you conspired with Julian Sanders to defraud Emily Vance. That is enough for criminal charges, in addition to the civil lawsuit. Arthur's face turned gray. For a moment I thought he would have a heart attack right there. What? What do you want? Eleanor? Money? I will give you money. I will give you whatever you ask. Just do not make this public. My reputation, my company, my family, your family. My voice turned to pure ice. Are you worried about your family now? Where was that concern when I was a single mother fighting to feed my daughter? Where was it when I worked 18 hours a day just to survive? Where was it when my daughter wore second-hand clothes because I could not afford to buy her new ones? Tears were running down my cheeks now. Years of pain, of struggle, of sacrifice, all coming to the surface. You stole my future. You stole the security my father wanted to give me. You stole 50 years of life without financial worries. And now you come here worried about your reputation. Emily stood up slowly. She walked toward me and took my hand. Mom, she said softly, what are you going to do? I looked at her. My beautiful daughter. The reason I fought so hard. The reason I survived everything. I am going to do the right thing, I said. I turned to Arthur. You have two options. Option 1. Transfer immediately the 60% of the shares that legally belong to me, plus 50 years of accumulated dividends with interest. We calculate that adds up to approximately $95 million. You will also resign as CEO and never have anything to do with the company again. Arthur opened his mouth to protest, but I continued. Option 2. I sue you for fraud, concealment of assets, unjust enrichment, and conspiracy. The trial will be public. The media will cover every detail. Your name will be destroyed. Your family will be ruined. And you will still lose the company, but without any favorable agreement. You will end up in jail at 80 years old. The silence that followed was absolute. All eyes were on Arthur. The great Arthur Sterling, the respected pharmaceutical tycoon, reduced to a trembling old man trapped in his own lies. You have 24 hours to decide, I added. Robert has all the documents ready. Sign tomorrow at 6 in the evening, or see us in court. Arthur looked at me with eyes full of tears. He was no longer the powerful businessman. He was just a scared old man who knew he had lost. I will sign, he whispered. I will sign tomorrow. Smart decision. Arthur turned to leave, but I approached him one last time. One more thing, I said quietly, just so he could hear. My father considered you his best friend. He trusted you with everything, and you betrayed him. I hope every penny you spend of the money you have left reminds you of the friendship you destroyed and the family you ruined. Arthur left the garden like a defeated man, his shoulders slumped, his walk unsteady, the image of destroyed power. I turned to the remaining guests. About 50 people were still there, witnesses to everything. I know this was not the event you expected, I said. I know you came to celebrate a wedding and instead witnessed this. But I regret nothing. I protected my daughter from the worst mistake of her life, and I recovered what legally belonged to me. If that makes you see me as a villain, I accept it. One of the guests, an older woman with silver hair, began to clap, then another, and another. Soon, almost everyone remaining was clapping. You did the right thing, someone shouted. That man deserved to be exposed, said another voice. Emily hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. Thank you for saving me. The event coordinator approached timidly, with an expression of absolute confusion on her face. "Mrs. Vance, what do we do with everything?" She made a sweeping gesture toward the reception hall, where the tables were perfectly decorated, the food prepared, the orchestra waiting, the dinner, the music, the flowers. I looked around. $220,000 in decorations, food, and entertainment that no one was going to enjoy. For a moment, I felt the weight of the wasted money. But then I had a better idea. "How many people are left here?" I asked. The coordinator counted quickly. "Approximately 60, ma'am." "Perfect. Tell them everyone is invited to stay. Eat, drink, enjoy the music. I will not let all this beauty go to waste. And call a women's shelter in the city, the one on Main Street. Tell them to send buses. Invite all the residents and the staff to come here tonight. Let them enjoy a dinner they will never forget." The coordinator blinked in surprise. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "Completely sure. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. So let's celebrate. Let's celebrate truth, justice, and women saving themselves from the wrong men." Emily looked at me with fresh tears in her eyes, but this time they were different. They were tears of gratitude, of relief, of love. "Mom, you are incredible," she whispered. An hour later, the hall had transformed. The 60 people who stayed occupied some tables, talking in low voices about what they had just witnessed. And then the buses from the shelter arrived. 32 women of all ages, some with small children, entered the hall with expressions of absolute awe. A young woman, no older than 25, with a baby in her arms, approached me with tears rolling down her cheeks. "Ma'am, I do not know who you are, but this is like a dream. 3 months ago I escaped my husband who beat me. I live in the shelter with my son. We haven't eaten anything this nice in years." I hugged her carefully, trying not to squash the baby. "Enjoy every bite, dear. And remember, you are stronger than you think. If I could survive and thrive, you can too." Emily joined me, still in her wedding dress, and began talking to the women from the shelter. She told them her story, what had just happened, how her mother had saved her from a disastrous marriage. The women listened, fascinated, some nodding with understanding, recognizing patterns of manipulation and abuse they themselves had lived. The orchestra began to play, not wedding music, but something upbeat, festive, liberating. Some of the women from the shelter began to dance with their children. The original guests mingled with them, sharing stories, offering words of encouragement. Robert sat next to me at one of the main tables. "You turned a disaster into something beautiful," he said with a genuine smile. "That requires a special kind of strength. I learned a long time ago that we can choose how we react to tragedies," I replied. "I could cry over the lost money and the ruined wedding, or I could do something meaningful with all this." "And tomorrow?" he asked. "When Arthur comes to sign the documents? Tomorrow I take back what belongs to me, and then I decide what to do with that company. Maybe I sell it, maybe I keep it and use it to do something good. I do not know yet. But for the first time in 50 years, the choice will be mine." The night continued with a strange but beautiful energy. The shelter director, a woman in her 50s with short hair and kind eyes, approached me near 10 at night. "Mrs. Vance, I want to thank you personally. Many of these women have lived very hard lives. Tonight, even if just for a few hours, they feel like princesses. You are giving them hope." "What does the shelter need?" I asked directly. "Money? Resources? Space?" She seemed surprised by the direct question. "All of the above. Honestly, we are always at capacity. We have to turn away women because we do not have space. We need renovations, more staff, job training programs." "Send me a detailed budget tomorrow," I said. "I am about to receive a considerable inheritance. I would like to use part of it to expand the shelter. Consider this the beginning of a long-term partnership." The woman was speechless for a moment, then hugged me tightly. Emily watched everything from another table, surrounded by her friends. Megan had brought her a plate of food she had barely touched. The maid of honor had taken off her veil and the elaborate headpiece, leaving her hair loose. She looked younger that way, more vulnerable, but also freer. I approached her. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Emily looked at her plate. Then she looked at me. I feel like I woke up from a nightmare, like the last 2 years were. I don't know, like I was under a spell or something. How did I not see the signs? Mom? How was I so blind? Because he was good at what he did. Manipulators are experts at making their victims feel special, loved, unique. He subtly isolated you from me, right? Making you feel like I was overprotective, that I did not understand his love. Emily nodded slowly. He told me you would never approve of anyone because no one would be good enough for your daughter. He made me feel like I had to choose between him and you. And I chose wrong. You did not choose wrong, my love. You were manipulated. There is a difference. And now you are free, Megan intervened gently. Emily, we all fell under his charm too. Julian convinced us he was perfect, that you two were the ideal couple. Even when your mom expressed doubts, we thought it was just maternal paranoia. Another friend added, now that I see everything in hindsight, there were signs, like when Julian always insisted on the most expensive places to go out, or how he always mentioned your mom's business, or how he got annoyed when you could not lend him money. Emily closed her eyes. He asked to borrow $15,000 last month. He said it was for a temporary business expense and would pay me back in 2 weeks. He never paid it back. I took out my phone and made a mental note to add that to the list of charges. Every detail matters for the legal case, I said. Everything you remember, however small it seems, tell me. Over the next hour, Emily and her friends recalled dozens of little red flags, lies about where he was, sudden mood swings, calls he had to take in private, business trips that never seemed to result in anything concrete. Every story was another piece of the puzzle showing who Julian really was. Near midnight, most of the women from the shelter had left, happy and full, with leftovers packed by the waiters. The original guests had also departed. Only Emily, her closest friends, Robert, Sarah, the lawyer, and I remained. Sarah opened her briefcase and took out documents. Emily, I need you to sign these papers tonight. They are affidavits confirming you never intended to give Julian power of attorney over your finances, that any document you signed was under false pretenses. This will help us legally annul anything he made you sign. Emily signed without hesitation, her hand trembling slightly. Do I have to see him again? She asked quietly. In court, probably, admitted Sarah. But you will not be alone. Your mother will be there. I will be there. And he will be handcuffed in a prison jumpsuit, facing years behind bars. You will have all the power, Robert added. Julian will probably try to cut a deal with the prosecution, admit guilt to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. It is what all cowards do when they realize they cannot win. I do not want him to get off easy, said Emily with a stronger voice than she had sounded in hours. I want him to face the full consequences of what he did. I smiled. There was my daughter, the strength she inherited from me, finally coming to the surface. Then we will make sure that happens, I promised. At 1 a.m, we finally arrived at my apartment. Emily came with me, still in her wrinkled wedding dress. I did not want her to be alone that night. Robert had accompanied us to make sure we arrived safely, and now he was saying goodbye at the door. Tomorrow at 6 sharp, he reminded me. Arthur will sign the share transfer documents in my office. I want you to be there to see it with your own eyes. I will be there, I promised. Once inside, I helped Emily take off that $32,000 dress she would never wear again. We hung it in the closet like a ghostly reminder of what could have been. I gave her one of my soft robes and made chamomile tea in the kitchen. We sat on the living room sofa, with the city lights blinking through the 16th floor windows. Emily held her cup with both hands, looking at the steaming liquid as if it held answers. Mom, she said finally, how do you do it? How did you survive everything you went through and still stay so strong? I took a sip of my own tea before answering. I was not always strong, my love. There were nights I cried myself to sleep. There were days I wanted to give up, but I had a reason to keep going. You. Every time I thought about quitting, I looked at you sleeping in your little bed and found strength I did not know I had. Emily rested her head on my shoulder like when she was a child. I am sorry for pushing you away these last few months. Julian told me you were being controlling, that I needed to set boundaries. Now I see he just wanted to isolate me from the only person who really protected me. Manipulators always isolate their victims, I explained. It is part of their strategy. They make you feel the world is against you, that only he understands you, that your family is the problem. It is a classic pattern. How long did you investigate before acting? 3 months, since I found your grandfather's will. At first I was only investigating Arthur and the company, but something told me to look deeper into Julian too. And when I found the connection between them, I knew I had to act fast. I could not let you marry that man knowing what I knew. Emily sat up straight, looking at me with eyes full of mixed admiration and pain. It must have been horrible for you, knowing the truth, watching me plan the wedding all excited, listening to me talk about Julian as if he were the love of my life. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done, I admitted. Every day, I wanted to scream the truth at you, but I needed solid proof. I needed evidence you could not deny. Because if I told you without proof, Julian would have convinced you I was lying, and he would have taken you away from me forever. You were right. I probably would have defended him. I probably would have told you horrible things. Emily started crying again. I am so stupid. You are not stupid. You are human. You are a young woman who wanted love and family. There is nothing stupid about that. Stupid would have been staying with him after discovering the truth. We sat in silence for a moment, drinking our tea. Then Emily asked something she had clearly been thinking. Grandpa's inheritance. $72 million. It is. It is an impossible amount to imagine. I know. What are you going to do with all that money? I looked out the window, thinking about the question. First, I am going to make sure you are financially protected. I am going to set up a trust in your name that Julian or any other manipulator can never touch. Second, I am going to expand the women's shelter. I saw those women's faces tonight. Emily, I saw hope where before there was only despair. I want to create more of that. Third, I am going to use part of the money to create job training programs for women leaving abusive situations, so they never have to depend on a man to survive. Emily smiled through her tears. That sounds perfect. Very you. And you? I asked. What are you going to do now? You had honeymoon plans, plans to move in with Julian, life plans? Emily looked at her hands. I need time. I need to process all this, maybe travel alone for a while, rediscover who I am without someone influencing me, and definitely need therapy. Lots of therapy. I already hired the best trauma therapist in the city, I said. Sarah recommended her, specialized in emotional abuse survivors. You have an appointment the day after tomorrow if you want it. Emily hugged me tightly. You are always 3 steps ahead, aren't you? Comes with years of practice. We stayed up until 3 a.m, talking about everything. About good memories from her childhood she had forgotten, about how I built my business from scratch, about her architecture dreams she had put on pause for Julian, about future plans, hopes, possibilities. Finally, Emily fell asleep on the sofa, exhausted emotionally and physically. I covered her with a soft blanket and watched her for a moment. My girl, my reason for being. Safe now. Protected. I went to my room, but I could not sleep. My mind was still processing everything that had happened. In less than 24 hours, I had destroyed a wedding, exposed a con artist, recovered a stolen inheritance, and saved my daughter from disaster. It was exhausting even to think about it. At 5 a.m, I gave up on sleep and made coffee. I sat at my desk and started reviewing the documents Robert had emailed me. The share transfer papers, the accumulated dividend calculations, the terms of Arthur's resignation as CEO. Everything was there, meticulously prepared. In a few hours, 50 years of injustice would be corrected. At 8 a.m, Emily woke up. We had breakfast together in comfortable silence. Toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice. Simple things. Normal things. After yesterday's chaos, normal felt like a luxury. Are you going to the signing? I asked her. Emily thought about it for a moment, then nodded. I want to be there. I want to see the man who conspired to rob me. I want to look him in the eye and let him know I am not afraid of him. That is my girl. At 5:30 in the afternoon, we arrived at Robert's office. It was a sleek corporate building downtown, all glass and steel. The conference room on the 20th floor had panoramic views of the whole city. Arthur was already there, sitting in a chair with his lawyer beside him. He looked as if he had aged 10 years in a single day. Robert was at the head of the table with piles of documents perfectly organized. A notary public waited in the corner. Everything was official, legal, irreversible. "Mrs. Vance," said Arthur's lawyer in a condescending tone, "my client is willing to transfer the shares as agreed, but requests that this be kept private, that there be no public statements, no additional lawsuits." "No, I interrupted him. "Those were not the terms. The terms were simple: total transfer of shares and accumulated dividends, or public trial. There is no negotiation." Arthur finally spoke, his voice broken. "Eleanor, please, think of my family. My grandson is about to graduate from college. My daughter is getting married next year. If this becomes public, it will destroy their lives too." I sat across from him, looking him directly in the eyes. "Arthur, when my father died and you left me destitute, did you think of my family? Did you think of the little girl who would have to grow up without a father and without the future he wanted to give her? Did you think of that when you were building your empire with stolen money?" Arthur lowered his gaze. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I really am sorry. Your apology arrives 50 years too late." I pointed to the documents. "Sige. Now." Arthur took the pen with a trembling hand. Page after page, he signed his name. Each signature was an acknowledgement of his guilt. Each initial was an admission of 50 years of fraud. The notary certified every document meticulously. Arthur's lawyer reviewed everything with a somber expression, knowing his client had completely lost. When he signed the last document, Robert gathered all the papers and placed them in a leather folder. "Effective immediately," said Robert. "As of this moment, Eleanor Vance is the owner of 60% of Valley Laboratories. The $95 million in shares and accumulated dividends will be transferred to her account within the next 72 hours. You, Mr. Sterling, resign as CEO and will have no involvement in company decisions from now on." Arthur stood up slowly, leaning on his cane. He looked at me one last time. "I hope the money makes you happy, Eleanor. It is not about happiness, Arthur. It is about justice. It is about recovering what my father wanted me to have. It is about making sure men like you, and like Julian, do not win." Arthur left the office without another word, his lawyer following hurriedly. The door closed behind them, and for a moment no one spoke. Then Emily broke the silence. "It is over," she said, with a voice full of awe. "It is really over." "This part, yes," I said. "But now something new begins." Robert smiled and raised a glass of champagne he had prepared for this moment. "To justice," he toasted. "And to women who never give up." We toasted. The champagne tasted like victory, like years of struggle finally rewarded, like a future that for the first time in decades looked bright and unlimited. In the following weeks, everything unfolded exactly as I had planned. Julian was formally charged with financial fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy. His lawyer tried to negotiate, but the prosecutor, armed with all the evidence I had compiled, rejected any favorable deal. The trial was quick. Chloe testified against him, destroying any chance of him presenting himself as an innocent victim. Julian's parents also faced charges as accomplices. Frank lost his CPA license. The mother was socially ruined. Julian was sentenced to 6 years in prison. When the verdict was read, I watched him from my seat in the courtroom. Our eyes met for a second. I saw pure hatred in his gaze, but I also saw something else: defeat. He knew I had won completely. Emily was at the trial every day, sitting beside me, stronger every day, seeing Julian handcuffed, seeing his mask fall completely, seeing the monster exposed to the world that helped her heal. After the verdict, we left the courthouse together. Reporters wanted interviews, photos, statements. Emily spoke to them with a firm and clear voice. This man manipulated me, lied to me, and planned to steal everything from me. But my mother saved me. And now I want to use my voice to help other women recognize signs of abuse and manipulation before it is too late. I felt so proud in that moment, I thought my heart would explode. With Valley Laboratories, I made a decision that surprised many. I did not sell the company. Instead, I appointed a new CEO, a brilliant 40-year-old woman with experience in ethical pharmaceuticals. Together, we transformed the company. We lowered prices on essential medications. We created access programs for low-income communities. We established research funds for neglected diseases that Big Pharma ignores because they are not profitable. I turned my father's tarnished legacy into something that would make him proud. The women's shelter received a $10 million donation. With that money, they bought a bigger building, hired additional staff, created job training programs in technology, accounting, and trades. The women passing through the shelter now had real paths to financial independence. They no longer had to choose between staying with an abuser or living on the street. Emily took 6 months to travel alone. She went to Europe, Asia, South America. She sent photos from every city, every beach, every mountain. In every image, she looked more radiant, freer, more herself. When she returned, she had changed. She was no longer the naive young woman who fell in love with a con artist. She was a strong, conscious woman, ready to build her own life on her own terms. She resumed her architecture career with renewed passion. Her first major project was designing the expansion of the women's shelter. She created spaces that were safe, but also beautiful, functional, yet hopeful. She won awards for that design. And more importantly, she gained confidence in herself. 1 year after the wedding that never happened, Emily and I were having dinner in my apartment. We had established a tradition of having dinner together every Sunday. Nothing elaborate. Just the two of us, home-cooked food, honest conversation. "Mom," said Emily while cutting her chicken, "there is something I want to tell you." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I met someone." My heart stopped for a second. All the protective mother fears returned instantly. "Relax," said Emily, laughing, seeing my expression. "I learned my lesson. I investigated him completely before even accepting a second date." "I know you probably investigated him too." I laughed. "Caught. Just a little. Caleb Mendez, 32 years old, architect like you. No debt, no criminal record, volunteers at a soup kitchen on Saturdays. Seems decent. More than decent, Mom. He is genuine. He is kind without any hidden agenda. He does not care about my money, because he has his own. And when I told him the whole story about Julian, he did not get scared. He got angry for me. He wanted to protect me." "Do you love him?" I asked. Emily thought about it carefully before answering. "It is still early for that word. But I like him. And what is more important? I like who I am when I am with him. I feel free to be myself. I am not trying to please him or become what he wants. Just me." "That," I said, "is exactly how real love should feel." 2 years after that early morning, when I received that devastating message, my life was unrecognizable in the best possible way. My pharmaceutical company continued to thrive. The women's shelter had helped more than 300 women escape abusive situations and start new lives. Emily was engaged to Caleb, and this time I was genuinely happy for her. Julian was still in prison, where he belonged. Arthur had died 6 months after signing the documents. A heart attack. Some said it was the shame that killed him. I felt nothing when I heard about his death. Neither satisfaction nor sadness. Just indifference. He no longer had power over me. One afternoon, I was in my office reviewing proposals for a new medical scholarship program for low-income students, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Normally I do not answer those calls, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Vance. A young, nervous voice. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Chloe. I do not know if you remember me. I was Julian's other woman." I stayed silent for a moment, surprised. "I remember you. What do you need?" I just wanted to thank you for exposing Julian, for showing me who he really was. After the trial, I realized he was using me too. He promised me a future he never intended to fulfill. And now I am in therapy, working on myself, understanding why I fell for his lies. I saw on the news everything you are doing for women victims of abuse, and I just wanted to tell you, thank you. You saved your daughter. But in a way, you also saved me. I felt unexpected tears in my eyes. Chloe, we all deserve second chances. We all deserve to learn from our mistakes and grow. I am glad you are finding your way. Me too, Mrs. Vance. Me too. When I hung up the phone, I stood looking out my office window. The city stretched out before me, full of lives, stories, women fighting their own battles. And I was using my recovered fortune, my second chance, to help them win. At 73, I finally understood something fundamental. Revenge is not about destroying those who hurt you. It is about building something so beautiful and meaningful with your life that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a footnote in your story. Julian wanted to steal from me. Arthur stole from me for 50 years, but in the end, neither of them could steal what really mattered. My strength, my dignity, my capacity to love and protect my daughter, and my will to make the world a better place. That early morning, when I read that cruel message, I could have given up. I could have accepted the humiliation. I could have cried in silence and let the evil men win. But I didn't, because I am Eleanor Vance, and women like me do not give up. We fight, we win, and then we use our victory to help others do the same.